Hello and welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Freed, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend, Mike Luciano. Mike, how are you feeling, buddy? I know we're 0-1, but it feels a little bit different. As Robert Saleh would say, it feels a little bit differently than the time the Jets were 1-0, I guess, a year ago, because we do have Aaron Rodgers. So how are you feeling today, buddy? What's going on?
Well, I agree with him. I know he got jumped for that statement, but I agree with it. You know, Monday night was bad, but it's better than having Aaron Rodgers' leg blown up and talking about, is Zach Wilson going to play? It's better than that. Just vibe-wise and feeling-wise. And I think every Jets fan deep down would agree. No matter how much you dislike Saleh or not, everybody would agree with that statement, especially because next month of games are some pretty winnable games for the Jets. So if they don't clean up in this schedule, starting with the Tennessee Titans this Sunday, then we're really in some we're up you-know-what creek without a paddle. So we'll talk about the Titans, and we'll also try to see if all this panicking is really warranted, because some stuff is, and some stuff just is not, and people are just baiting all the rage out there. And there's a living to be made in it. I get it, but we're going to have a little more nuance here. So thank you for tuning in. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. And we're on YouTube, so you can like the stream and you can subscribe. It's all handy. Only a couple buttons in this new high-tech Jetsons futuristic age we have here. That's all you got to do to support the show, guys. Just pop, and you did it. That easy. Kid can do it. Your grandma can do it. So if you want to support the show, that is how you do it. But, Justin,
Yes,
we got a pretty fun show for you today. Let's talk panic, or rather lack of same, because there are some things to panic about. And it's week one. It's overreaction time. As people have mentioned, there was just a couple of years ago, Jameis Winston threw 5 touchdowns and beat Aaron Rodgers 38-3. Like, these things happen. Sometimes you just get got, especially when you're playing the 49ers. Now, I hate to just put them up as like, oh, the mighty, the immortal 49ers. There was no chance. Like, they haven't earned that status yet, but they are really good, as evidenced last game. But there were some areas of panic. Obviously, Rodgers, I've seen people just dig at Rodgers. I'm like, look, I didn't think he played amazing in the first game. Like, obviously, the interception was kind of a weird throw, and he did have a couple of misses. But you know what? If you watch that game and you actually, like, without irony, engage in those, look at Zach Wilson's stat line from the last game, and then look at this one. It's similar because I've seen a lot of those sort of posts. Yep. If you do that ironically, do not watch this show. The only Jets podcast who tells their audience not to watch them. If you believe that earnestly, we can't deal with you, because you saw a lot of good from Aaron Rodgers. He actually was PFF. I don't like using PFF grades all the time, but he was their 4th best quarterback. EPA was pretty good.
Yep.
And again, he only had a couple of 22 plays pretty much you could really be graded on an entire NFL game. Not really a big sample size here for Aaron Rodgers. So we'll kind of figure out more of where he's at in the next couple weeks. But in terms of how he performed against San Francisco with all the circumstances around that, not really too much negative to report about.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest takeaways, if not my biggest positive takeaway from that game, is that Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. The mobility isn't there as much. The escapability is kind of gone. But if you give him a clean pocket, which for the most part the Jets did on Monday night, he's still Aaron Rodgers, and he's still going to make some big boy throws that Zach Wilson and most other quarterbacks in the NFL, I don't want to say they're not capable of making, because I hate that phrase of, oh, only 5 quarterbacks in the NFL are making this throw. But
Wilson's capable of a lot of throws. He just never did it.
Exactly. It's the Aaron Rodgers is going to make throws that most quarterbacks are not capable of making on a consistent basis, but Rodgers will make those throws on a consistent basis. Couple stats out there for you. You mentioned the PFF grade, because I think just looking at the box score numbers, you wouldn't know that Aaron Rodgers played really well. I think he played even better than you're giving him credit for. I thought he was top 2 or 3 player on the roster on Monday, if not the best player on the Jets roster. Now, that's a pretty low bar. The Jets as a whole were not good on Monday night, but I do think that he played very well. Michael Nania, our friend over at the Jets X Factor, pointed out on Twitter that Rodgers had an 86.2 PFF grade, and he averaged 7.4 yards per dropback. It had been 88 games since the last time that the Jets had a quarterback post at least an 85 overall PFF grade and average 7 yards or more per dropback in a game. The last time that happened was week 16 of 2018. That was Sam Darnold. So
I think I was at that game. Did they play the Colts, I think?
No, that was against Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
So it's been that long. Now, obviously, again, we're cherry picking stats a little bit here. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers had the best game of any Jets quarterback since week 18 or week 16 of 2018. But I do think that the bar has been raised pretty high for Jets quarterback play now, at least given what we've seen in the past. I thought Rodgers was good. He looked like Aaron Rodgers. Again, the mobility isn't going to be there as much. The escapability is not completely gone. I mean, having watched Kirk Cousins in Atlanta on Sunday the day before, I mean, Cousins is cooked. Like
that was more concerning, and they can't get out of that for two more years.
He's cooked. Rodgers had a couple of plays where he was at least able to move. Like he's not going to be the Aaron Rodgers of old where he's making Patrick Mahomes style plays. He's not going to be doing that. But Tom Brady was still very effective in his older age with the lack of mobility. Not that he was ever mobile to begin with. Peyton Manning, until the very end of his career, was also pretty effective late in his career. I know we're talking about two of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but Aaron Rodgers is also one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And he looked like Aaron Rodgers. So I'm not ready to fully say like, oh, he's back, he's going to be an MVP candidate. But I'm very confident in saying that if he stays healthy and they give him a clean pocket, he's going to be a good quarterback this year.
Well, the one thing I'll push back on a little bit is you did say like he's not particularly mobile. Like that is one thing I want to see is I do need to see him escape the pocket a little bit just because Tom Brady was effective because he – even after getting hurt, like he had the old ACL thing, but I mean, he could never run. Yeah. So even as he got older, he was never moving around ever. He was playing the same style. Part of what made Aaron Rodgers was all the scramble stuff and throwing on the run. Like that's obviously throwing from the pocket too, but that's where a lot of the highlight plays come from. You want to see that because if he can't do that, I like this offensive line. I like this pass protection. I still don't know in totality if he's just going to be rooted in the pocket and just sit back and throw like a mortar tower, like Bucks Brady. I don't know if they could protect him that well against every single team, which would really be concerning for me. But I'm with you in the fact that throwing-wise, I mean, there was really no complaints for Aaron Rodgers, and his job is to throw the ball, so I'm not overly concerned there. I want to get to a point, though, from John Mundock on chat. Rodgers was good, play calling was weak. Again, yeah, but as we said on the stream right after the game too, like Aaron Rodgers, probably more than any other quarterback in the league now, has the most control over play calls and the offense. Like he basically is going old school Kenny Stabler calling his own plays kind of thing. Like, he has that much in terms of influence over that. So part of it, yeah, I think is Hackett. Part of it too is Breece Hall just didn't have a good game. Run blocking just didn't have a good game. So, like, I don't know what Aaron Rodgers is supposed to do, like, with that. He can't make he could suggest that the offensive line blocks better. He can't make them. So, just a tough game. And sometimes that happens in the NFL. Sometimes you have bad games, the other team has good games.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Jets ran somewhere between 40 and 50, like, something plays. Like, that's you're not going to win games like that. Like, they barely had the ball. They had the ball for around 20 minutes of a 60-minute football game. It's hard to get into any rhythm. There was a stretch from like the middle towards the end of the second quarter until like the very like middle of the third quarter where the Jets did not touch the ball. And that was like over. And you had halftime in the middle of that too. So the Jets went like 30, 45 minutes, whatever it was, without Aaron Rodgers touching the ball. I mean, you can't get into a rhythm as a play caller doing that. I'm not going to sit here and defend Nathaniel Hackett. I don't think he's very good at what he does, but it's hard to have too many takeaways given just they had so few plays because they couldn't stop the run and they couldn't run the ball. And if you can't do both of those things, you're not going to have possession and you're probably not going to win the game. And I want to talk about one of those things, Mike, because let's transition a little bit to talking about what could be the biggest concern maybe coming out of that first game, and that is the run defense, because the run defense was an absolute mess on Monday night. And this is one of those things, we talked about it in the post game. I'm not sure I see a light at the end of the tunnel. Unlike other things, I think the pass rush might be able to get fixed. You know, I think you can make a move, maybe to add another playmaker at the deadline. I don't know about the run defense, man. It was bad. What is your panic level for the Jets run defense going into week 2?
Scale of 1 to 10, I'm about an 8. Now, there's not going to be a perfect team out there. Like, there's going to be weaknesses, and it seems like the Jets kind of went into this year. Like, if you went into this year saying pick out an area where they could struggle, honestly, I bet run defense would probably be up there. The offensive line would be up there too. And with the way Saleh just does his defense, like sometimes schemes have rules, and sometimes Saleh wants guys to be over aggressive and pursue and fly around, and he wants smaller, more athletic defensive linemen. Like, that's what he wants. And the benefit of that is when you're winning, you have a really good secondary behind you, and you can just tee off on the quarterback. Now, when you're losing and you need to stop the run, even when he was with San Francisco, that was a problem stopping the run, unless he had just like a freaky like Eric Armstead in the middle. And even then there were some issues. Like, the way his scheme is set up, they're never going to just be the 2000 Ravens stuff in the run. It's not going to happen. But to have that, for it to be Jordan Mason, I don't want to keep harping on it from the last stream, but to have it be Jordan Mason and to have it be Trent Williams, who just got back, and a rookie guard who was picked in the 3rd round also starting, and to just completely wash him out. I mean, they were putting 7-8 guys in the box. Didn't matter. That's the concerning part to me, is this was not, in terms of just the offensive line in total, this was not a high-end opponent. Mm-hmm. And they completely beat up on him. Now, Quinnen Williams, awesome player, allowed to have a singular bad game. And again, he's always been the interior pass rushing is what you got Quinnen Williams for. Everybody else was horrid. Will McDonald, very, very disappointing game. I'm extremely disappointed in Will McDonald. Michael Clemens, I know we got that sack at the end, and if you want to say everybody else was a crap sandwich and he was a crap sandwich with mustard, fine, but they both sucked. Jermaine Johnson, what a shocking game that was. I thought Jermaine Johnson was going to keep going up and up and up. That looked like a regression. Like, that looked like rookie year Jermaine Johnson, which is an insult. That is not a compliment.
Look, worse. That was the worst game of his career by PFF standards, by far.
By watching standards, too. It was really bad. He had that penalty that negated the 3 and out and gave him a first down, extended a drive. They scored on that one. And Lecky Foda will help, but like not enough where you're going to make a difference. And the problem with a unit like this, too, is everybody's pitching solutions, but because of the schematic things like I was bringing up earlier, I don't think any of these solutions, or just hypothetical, they should have done this, I don't think that would have really helped. Like, yeah, John Franklin Myers would have helped, but like Jordan Mason would have still run for 100 yards against him with John Franklin Myers or without him. Hassan Reddick would have made the defensive line better, but he's not going to be an elite edge-setting run defender. Yeah, maybe they could have added a different guy, drafted somebody else. Like, it wouldn't have helped. Mm-hmm. Like, that was a performance so bad that's why I'm at the 8 concern, because even if you suggest fixes, and even if some of those fixes work, I'm still concerned that it's going to be a problem. That's why I'm a little bit like, man, you got to hold your breath now.
I remember a week ago when we were previewing that 49ers game. I remember one of the things that I specifically mentioned that I was really worried about with the defense was tackling. It was mostly tackling in open space was what I'd said, but just tackling in general. Was very concerned about that because the Jets play a very aggressive style on defense, and Kyle Shanahan knows that very well. He knows that better than anybody, and he knows how to exploit that. And the 49ers did exactly that on Monday night. That was my worst fears, and they happened. The Jets missed 18 tackles as a team. It's ridiculous. That's really bad. Sauce Gardner had 3 missed tackles. I think 5 or 6 other players had multiple missed tackles. That can't happen. I mean, it was beyond just the run defense and the gap discipline. Like, they just were there and were not making tackles. I think it's a collection of things here, and I am concerned. I think I'll put it at like a 7 right now. I'll go a slightly below you for a couple of reasons. One, I think we overlooked this a little bit when we were talking about the preview. While the 49ers offensive line may not be the most talented, obviously outside of Trent Williams, they always find a way to run the ball. Whether it's Jordan Mason, by the way, entered that game with like a career rushing average of like 5.8 yards per carry, by the way. On not like 6 carries. Like, he had a decent amount of carries in his career. He's always run well because the 49ers always run block. It doesn't matter. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey, but most of the time, whoever they put back there, Matt Breida, whoever the hell it is averaging 5 yards per carry. Like, that's just what they do. So schematically, that's just Kyle Shanahan. He was 1 or 2 steps ahead of the Jets the entire time. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is rust, preseason rust. The Jets did not play their starters at all in the preseason. Neither did the 49ers, I believe. But we really, really saw that rust with the Jets defense when it came to tackling, because you're not tackling in training camp. You didn't play in the preseason, so you're not tackling then. You have not gotten the opportunity to tackle guys. So you are very, very, very rusty trying to do that. And we saw that with guys like Quincy Williams, with DJ Reed, with Sauce Gardner, with CJ Mosley, with the ends, like Jermaine Johnson missed a couple of tackles. Will McDonald did as well. We saw that rust. The good news is that'll hopefully wear off. The bad news is I think the third part of it is the changes that they made on the defensive line this offseason. John Franklin Myers not being there. No, that doesn't fix everything, but it makes it a lot better. I mean, he's a vastly, vastly underrated player by Jets fans. I mean, even just if we're ignoring the run defense for a second, even as a pass rusher, he had 58 pressures last year, which is about the same that Jermaine Johnson had on fewer pass rush snaps. And then he also, or compare it to the guy that they're trying to replace him with, which is Michael Clemens, who the Jets coaching staff seems to love. Michael Clemens had 8. He had 8 pressures all of last year. 8. They're not comparable players. And so the Jets downgraded significantly on the defensive line. So I think if you combine that with the schematic brilliance of Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers offensive line and the rust of the Jets defense, you get what you saw on Monday night. Now, the good news is they're not going to play Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers every week, and the rust should shake off. The bad news is they are worse on the defensive line, and that's not changing. Sure, Lecky Fotu coming back would help. Hassan Reddick coming back helps the pass rush, doesn't help the run defense as much, but that is going to be a concern. And that's why I'm at a 7, not an 8, because I'm like, I don't think their opponent is going to average 6 yards per carry against them every single week. But I am concerned that it's going to be a recurring issue. I mean, the Titans, well, again, their offensive line isn't particularly amazing. They do run the ball well, and they did run the ball well in week 1 with Tony Pollard. So I am a little concerned, and we can talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the Titans. But that's kind of where I am at with the run defense at the moment.
The problem with the Robert Saleh Jets is certain teams are built to be ahead, and certain teams are actually built to play well from behind. The Chiefs can play really well from behind. Buffalo, Miami can play really well from behind. Then there's teams like Baltimore where they're built to play ahead and just beat you down, just demoralize you, like running on the ground. The Jets are trying to build themselves like that because defensively, when they're ahead and they can tee off pass rush, that's a fun defense to watch.
Ideally, yeah.
Offensively, when they're ahead, Breece Hall getting the ball a lot, Garrett Wilson, fun to watch. The problem is they are never ahead. They're behind a lot, and because of that, teams like to run the ball on them. And that leads into a problem that Saleh's had his entire Jets career is guys missing tackles.
Yeah.
And part of that, too, is he wants guys who play with their hair on fire. He wants Quincy Williams guys as his linebackers. Quincy Williams runs all over the field, occasionally not the best tackler. And the entire credo of a Shanahan offense is we're going to make you tackle. We're going to get the ball to our guys in open space and make you tackle them. And they couldn't do it. That was what was disheartening, is because Shanahan basically said, here's what we're doing. I know you can't stop it. I played against you for 4 years. I know how to beat this.
Yeah.
And he did.
And by the way, a guy who we pointed out as an X factor last week, who was, as a tackling machine, Chuck Clark, did not miss a tackle in week 1. So at least the Jets upgraded there. Chuck Clark had the highest tackle grade in the team. He had 3 tackles, did not miss a tackle, despite 11 different players on the team. 11 different players on the team missing at least a tackle, including Quantez Stiggers, who played 1 snap and missed a tackle on that snap. 11 different players.
Welcome to the NFL.
Yeah, missed at least 1 tackle. That's brutal, man. Like, that is absolutely brutal. Actually, I want to correct myself. Quincy Williams did not miss a tackle. I said that before that he did. So shout out.
Okay. I always thought I got my wire. Maybe I thought it was Mosley on one particular play.
Mosley missed a couple tackles. Tony tackles, Jamie Sherwood, McDonald, Ashton Davis.
I had this play in my mind of Mason running. He just spun off a guy. I thought it was Quincy, but it was Mosley.
So I am concerned about the run defense. I think we both agree on that. I want to get where you're at here with the pass rush, because this is the calling card of Robert Saleh's defense. Like like you just said, you were talking about the Jets love to play when they're ahead because they want to get teams in those 3rd and 10 situations. They want to be able to rush the passer. They want to be able to, as Robert Saleh says, let guys go, pin their ears back, and just get after the quarterback. We didn't see that at all on Monday. I mean, the Brock Purdy was throwing from a clean pocket all night. How much of that is, the absence of Hassan Reddick? How much of that is rust? How much of that is just Trent Williams being great? What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, here's why I'm concerned. If you look at, I have a lot of problems with PFF, and Jets fans have a lot of problems with PFF.
Yes, they do.
Quinn Williams against the Packers.
Yep.
That game. I think it was the Packers where he had like a 64 after getting 7 pressures and 3 sacks or something. And then they literally yelled at them, and then they changed it to an 81, which is a pretty big change. But I believe the Jets had 3 of the 5 lowest graded edge rushers. Now, Braden McGregor Undrafted guy, first game, didn't play very much, whatever. The other two are Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson.
Yeah.
And the Jets, I know that you were more upset about this than me. They let Bryce Huff go with the thought that we got Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson. We can stomach this. And Will McDonald being bad, while extremely disappointing, second-year guy who hasn't played much, I would have been more. I would have expected him to struggle more than I would have expected Jermaine Johnson to struggle. And even if you do the grade on the curve of going against Trent Williams, he was bad because they moved him around a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't always going against Trent Williams. And he was still really bad. Jermaine, he doesn't get talked about as much because I know he's part of that great draft class. But if you look at, like, Brees, no doubt star. Garrett Wilson, no doubt star. Sauce, you can see him from space for how good he is. I feel like a lot of Jets fans will try to put Jermaine in that class of guy. I don't think he is.
Yes.
And I think that maybe the Jets coaching staff think that he could be that guy. I don't think he is. And that could be a big miscalculation. If they think Jermaine has that sort of potential, if he falls short, there's going to be a lot of ramifications. Even if you get Hassan Reddick back from wherever in the world he may be. He could be in Albania right now. We'd have no idea. Even if you get him back, if Jermaine is struggling, you could have one really good edge rusher and have a terrible pass rush. We've seen it for Cleveland with Myles Garrett. That can happen a lot. The Chargers with Joey Bosa. That one pass rusher does not a unit make. If Jermaine's not good, this might be like DEFCON 2 or 3. It's very concerning.
I forget where I vocalized this or where I've said this. I might have said it recently. I was on the Jets Pulse podcast, I believe it's called, with Thomas Christopher. That was fun. I forget if I talked about it here or there, but I have been under the belief that Jermaine Johnson has gotten a little overrated by Jets fans. I don't think I've said that on this show, actually. So now it feels like I'm just piling on at the right time. But I agree with you, Mike. I don't think he's in that tier. I feel like people saw like Pro Bowl next to his name last year and were like, oh, he had a Pro Bowl season. Not really, man. Like, he was the 7th alternate, I think, at edge rusher, and then he only made it because the guys ahead of him dropped out. He had, 7.5 sacks? I don't think this Jets defense works if Jermaine Johnson is your best pass rusher, like your best true pass rusher. It didn't work last year like that because Bryce Huff was your best true pass rusher. This year, obviously, the hope is that Hassan Reddick is that. If Hassan Reddick's not there, Jermaine can't be your best pass rusher. That means Will McDonald needs to be your best edge rusher, like your best true edge rusher, pass rusher on the edge. And boy, I don't think he's ready for that role at all. And I didn't think he was going into the season, and I definitely don't think after week 1 that he is ready for that role. I don't
He's
think
an older rookie. I think he's older than Jermaine. I think he's 25.
He's basically the same age as Bryce Huff. Just throwing that out there.
Bryce Huff, who's been banished to the shadow realm over in Philly.
It's crazy, and there's a real chance that this swap, like unofficial Hassan Reddick for Bryce Huff swap, ends up being a disaster for both teams. Where like it would have just made sense if they stayed where they were. Like if Reddick is not going to get a new contract, should have just stayed in Philly, and if Huff isn't going to play on three downs, he should have just stayed in New York.
And honestly, Franklin Myers was pretty bad in Denver. So how about we undo all of that? Let's just rewind it and
legitimately. And Jets fans are going to try and use like, oh, Huff was bad and JFM was bad, and that's why you shouldn't have kept them. They were good here. I don't even care if you want to call them Salah merchants. I don't give a fuck.
Salah's still here.
Salah's here. It works. Like, why? I would gladly pay $17 million a year for what Bryce Huff did with the Jets last year. Not even hesitate about it. Man was the most efficient pass rusher in the NFL, 10+ sacks, a bunch of pressures, highest pressure rate in the league, while playing roughly 50% of snaps for most of the year. Sign me up for that any day of the week. I don't give a shit if he's bad at run defense. You know who else is bad at run defense? Hassan Reddick. And Will McDonald's worse. You know what Will McDonald's run defense grade was in week 1, Mike? 26.9.
Ooh.
It's one of the worst PFF run defense grades I've ever seen. I mean, not that Jermaine's was better, 33.5. And again, PFF's not everything. But watch that tape and tell me Will McDonald can defend the run. He can't. He cannot. Bryce Huff is probably a better run defender at this stage than Will McDonald. And that's not saying much because Bryce Huff is not a good run defender. So again, if we're talking about the overall pass rush, like I still think they'll probably figure something out. I don't think it's going to be as bad as it was in week 1. Maybe some of it's rust. I do, I hope that the summer we just saw from guys like Tack McKinley and Braden McGregor isn't a complete fluke and that they're not complete zeros out there, because neither of them did anything at all with the snaps they were given. I'd like to see them at least be somewhat complementary pieces in the pass rush rotation. That was the hope. But I'm not, they need Hassan Reddick. They need Hassan Reddick. And that doesn't mean that they should cave. We've talked about this many times. Like, I don't think this should be a panic situation. I don't think it's going to be. But this Jets defense looks so much different if Hassan Reddick is there, because then Jermaine Johnson is not thrust into a role he should not be in. Jermaine Johnson should be an above average edge setter. That's what he is. He's a solid pass rusher and a very good run defender. Usually. He wasn't on Monday, but usually that's what he is. That's a really good number 2 edge rusher to have on your team. That's not what he is right now. That's almost like a Bradley Chubb type is how I would put that. And you want Hassan Reddick to be your Jalen Phillips, and you want Bradley Chubb, you want Jermaine Johnson to be your Bradley Chubb. Then you're golden. Then you're great, because also you have Quentin Williams on the interior, and he's great. And honestly, I thought Javon Kinlaw, of all the defensive linemen, honestly played pretty well in week 1. I thought he was solid. At least even a run defense wasn't obliterated like some of the other guys were, and he had a couple of moments as a pass rusher. But yeah, overall the pass rush, I'm not panicking. I'd say like level 5 maybe for concern, because it should be better, but I don't want to fully overreact to week 1. So I'll say 5. But if they don't get pressure again against the Titans, that's rocketing up to like a 7 or 8. Like they need to bounce back against Tennessee.
Titans especially. We'll talk about their offensive line soon, but if you want to do like a positive coping way, in a way, you could say, well, at least this week, the biggest problem was the defensive line, which historically, that's been the one area the Jets have been great. Now, I know it could be kind of a Rorschach thing, because negatively you're like, oh, we finally get Rodgers. Now the one area we're good is sucking. But you could also say, well, last 2 years was still a lot of the same guys. They've had a good defensive line, and they will always mix and match guys and kind of figure something out. So if you want the positive spin on it, it's if you give these guys enough time, eventually they figure something out, because they figured something out the last couple of years. They could do it again. If you want to do the positive coping way, you could sell me on that.
Right.
But Justin, I want to get your thoughts on the playmakers.
Okay.
Well, Garrett Wilson notwithstanding, because we all know he is great, played great. There we go.
He's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Outside of that, Breece Hall, bad game. Only his second career fumble, but a fumble nonetheless.
Mm.
Then you add in Tyler Conklin, who did nothing. Mike Williams, who may as well have been inactive. I don't even know why they activated him to play him like 9 or 10 snaps or however little they played him. Lazard, amazing, but Alan Lazard's not going to get 80 yards and 2 touchdowns every single game. Malachi Corley
with Aaron Rodgers
played. Did he get any snaps, Corley?
Corley played 1 total snap on offense and 0 on special teams.
1. And then Braylon Allen, barely anything. I'm more concerned about that, specifically Mike Williams. And I know he's hurt. And I know that he's ramping back up. And I know that Lazard kind of had the high-end production that Williams would have had if he was in there.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to get that every game from Lazard. And if they don't get a second receiver, like Mike, especially one who could go vertical, because I know it was the first game and they were worried about like Bosa and the pass rush. So it was a lot of check down stuff. I don't know if you saw the passing chart, by the way, but Aaron Rodgers just like did not throw to his right the entire game.
Yeah. There's Charvarius Ward had a good game, I guess. He was guarding right.
He threw right like twice.
Yep.
But they need some sort of vertical big playmaker outside of those two that we know they have, Wilson and Hall. If Mike Williams can't be that, if Malachi Corley can't be that, we're kind of right back where we started last year, where Garrett Wilson's awesome. Alan Lazard looks good for 1 or 2 games, and then he'll just fall off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And then Conklin's a completely average tight end. And then here we are again last year, even after all the offseason bombast.
Yeah, week 1 definitely felt like a repeat of a lot of Jets games last year, at least as far as how they were distributing touches on offense. I believe
in that they weren't, because Garrett Wilson got all of them until like the third quarter.
I'm pretty confident that I'm almost positive on the entire first half, the only 2 offensive players besides Aaron Rodgers that touched the ball, besides like the Alan Lazard drop, were Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Those are the only 2 to have like a target or I should say a reception or a carry up until the third quarter. That cannot be the case moving forward. And I know Alan Lazard had a really good second half. And honestly, like, I'm not super concerned at the moment about Mike Williams. This is kind of how I envisioned it going. Like I guess I'd hope he played a little bit more. I think he ended up playing like 9 snaps is what I saw or something. I don't know. That's about what I expected. They're going to ramp him up. He's going to get worked in more. Eventually, you assume and hope he's going to just take the role that Alan Lazard has right now. In that role, Lazard was good in week 1. Lazard, I mean, he obviously had the drop early on. You're going to get that with Alan Lazard. That is Alan Lazard. But for the most part, the version of Lazard that we saw in week 1 was the version that we saw at his best in Green Bay, which was a solid high-end wide receiver 3. And if that's your number 2 in an offense where you got Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, that's okay. That's not bad. Like that's totally fine. The production we saw from Lazard in week 1 is great. If he can continue to do that until Mike Williams is ready to take on a larger role, awesome. I don't have major concerns there. My bigger concerns come with you need to get Tyler Conklin more involved. I'm a big Tyler Conklin fan. I think he's a lot better than his numbers would indicate, or even his numbers honestly are good. Like he's top 10 in receptions and receiving yards amongst tight ends over the last 2 years in a terrible offense. He's good. I think he's a solid player. Get him more involved. I want to see Braylon Allen on the field a little bit more, especially I think we talked about this post game. They had the 2-point conversion attempt where you drafted like a 240-pound running back to use in short yardage situations. Why are you pounding the rock with Breece Hall up the middle when you literally have you've said to the media, you've said publicly that you are not pleased with how he runs in short yardage situations, and you draft the guy to take on that role and then don't use him in that role. And then they had a 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. Braylon Allen's nowhere to be found. He's not even on the field. Use Braylon Allen. As far as Malachi Corley is concerned, you're not going to see him much this year, man. You're just not. I would be very surprised if Malachi Corley played any.
You only traded up to get him. I mean,
yeah, and it's disappointing. It is very much disappointing. I was saying it for weeks, and a month ago, I was on Twitter being like, "There's a good chance like Malachi Corley might be a healthy scratch week 1." Now he wasn't, but he might as well have been. And once again, you're probably going to see him be a healthy scratch at points this year because if you have a guy, he played 1 offensive snap and 0 special team snaps. He might as well have not played. So if you need another guy to scratch, it's going to be him. Like he was probably the last guy, the 48th guy on the game day active roster was probably Malachi Corley. He has no role right now. He couldn't win the kick return job. That's Xavier Gibson and Isaiah Davis. And he clearly has no role in the offense as a wide receiver. Maybe that changes as the year goes on, but the time for the growth that we needed to see from him was more in the summer. And I think whatever the Jets saw, they were convinced that he's not ready to be playing significant wide receiver snaps. So I don't know, man. I don't know. As Brian said in chat, same guy who thought Dalvin Cook was a good pass protector and short yards back, not knowing how to scheme their talent. Yeah, man. I mean, the Jets tried to use Dalvin Cook in a similar role to how they envisioned Braylon Allen, and that's just, it does not make sense to me at all.
And I know that, some of this was like played up for the media and stuff like that, but when you saw how excited Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh were that they got Malachi Corley.
Yeah.
And then a couple months later, like they can't find anything for him. That's concerning to me. If you're that all in on a guy and you can't even manufacture a single touch for him. Now, to be fair, Garrett Wilson didn't start his first game either. Remember, he had to basically force his way into the starting lineup.
I think he played 48% of snaps or something like that week 1. He still
that was like the game was over. It was like at the end.
Sure, but he was still playing. He's banished to the shadow realm like Malachi.
Point being, he forced his way into a bigger role. Corley's not going to force his way into a starting role, but it does seem like Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, unless you're a freak, don't play. And even like Breece Hall, I don't think he was the immediate starter right away running back?
He didn't take over the bulk of reps until a couple games before his injury. It was Michael Carter was the top guy.
Right. So that at least is some consistency. Like early on, they don't play the rookies. So maybe there's an opportunity. But again, that would it's going to sound silly. Maybe this sounds silly. Maybe put me on WFAN or whatever. But if you're that into a guy, like a skill position player, and it seems like, honestly, like the vibes it's giving off right now is kind of buyer's remorse. Because if you spent the number 65 pick after giving up stuff to move up there, Malachi Corley, no matter what, remember those texts?
Yep.
And then now he's what, like basically Jason Brownlee in
Now
terms of how the offense is viewing him.
He's playing less than Irv Charles.
He's playing less than Irv Charles. That would concern me if they're that into a guy and he just straight up can't play. Now, I think Corley can play, but I've also thought other Jets day 2 skill position players could play.
Mm-hmm.
Ardarius Stewart, very similar sort of style, and he couldn't. So I want to see him be good because I wasn't even the biggest fan of Malachi Corley, if you remember in the draft, but I still think he's a cool player and a productive player. And I want to see him because I think at his best, he can be really good and really effective. But this is not the start that anybody wanted to see.
No, and I think we were in a similar boat to when that pick was made in that there were other receivers that I preferred over Malachi Corley, but I saw the vision. I understood what their plan was with Malachi Corley. We're just not seeing it. And it's unfortunate that that's, you spent a notable day 2 pick. I mean, they tried to trade up into the second round. They ended up using the first
for
pick
him.
And then they ended up using the first pick in the third round to draft him. So they spent a very notable pick in a season where you're trying to win the Super Bowl. You expected him to compete and contribute immediately. And unfortunately, he's not. Mike, I do want to get your thoughts at least on one more thing here. I guess this is more like there's some positives and then some negatives. Honestly, a big positive and then maybe a big negative. Let's talk about the offensive line, because I think it's a tale of 2 different situations here where I thought the pass protection was fantastic. It was one of the best pass pro games I've seen from the Jets offensive line in a long time, genuinely. But the run blocking was a mess. And I don't think Breece Hall had a particularly amazing game independent of the O-line, but a lot of it was on the run blocking. So what are your thoughts on the pass pro and then the run blocking, and how for real do you think the pass protection is, and then how concerned are you about the run blocking?
Well, let's go ask our friends at the 33rd team, because they compiled the best offensive lines in pass protection. It was basically an average of pressure rate and sack rate.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jets were number 2.
Hell yeah.
Only the Saints were above them. And the Saints were playing the godless abomination known as the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
Jets were number 2. They were 7th in pressure rate allowed and 3rd in sack rate. So damn fine job all around.
Yep.
And that's a quality opponent, because you got Nick Bosa. Malik Collins had a fantastic game. And you got a guy in Brandon Staley, who I know we make fun of Brandon Staley a lot, but he was around for like Aaron Donald's prime in LA. Guy kind of knows defensive line stuff. I mean, he kind of gets a lot out of guys. Pretty strong unit. Looked fine. I know Morgan Moses graded out really badly. He was probably the worst pass protector there, but I didn't see any like noticeable issues. I thought he was okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think the grade was a little harsh on him. Tyron Smith looked like Tyron Smith. No real problem. Like, was Aaron Rodgers, other than the Floyd sack, did he really get touched?
He got hit twice, and one of them was a sack. That's it. 2 QB hits all game. That's really good.
Now, run blocking. Not only really bad, but really bad for 2 players that I had a lot of hopes for, because Smith, Moses, fine. John Simpson is a better run blocker than a pass blocker. I thought he was average in his debut. Joe Tippmann and Elijah Vera-Tucker, they were horrendous in that game. And Tippmann, I thought, had a pretty good rookie year. I thought he finished, especially considering what was going on around him, moving positions and doing this and that. I thought he held up okay. AVT is the concerning one, because for a while he was the best offensive lineman on this team for 2 years. And in that game, I thought he was the worst of the 5. And I know he's coming off an injury, but I mean, he's got contract stuff coming up soon. Like, this is a huge year for him, and the Jets are banking on him like they think he's going to be the AVT of old. If he's not, then we said before the year, John Simpson is your worst offensive lineman is fine. If AVT is your worst and John Simpson's like your 3rd best, that's a problem.
Yeah, as far as the pass protection is concerned, very, very encouraged. Very, very pleased by that. I honestly, better than I expected. And obviously you need the run blocking to be better too, but if you could choose one of those 2 to be really good in week 1, we were all going to choose the pass protection, because you need to keep Aaron Rodgers upright, especially in his first game back from injury. Pass protection was great. I was very, very encouraged by that. I do think the interior did a really good job pass protecting as well. It wasn't just the tackles. It was everybody. Run blocking though, man. It was brutal. It was brutal. Some more stats here. Michael Nania pulled these as well. So this is from Next Gen Stats. Brees Hall had negative 10 rushing yards before contact, which was the second worst among running backs in week 1. By the way, Hall finished with 54 rushing yards in week 1. Do you know how many yards he gained after contact?
1.
No. Yards after contact. So he had to gain.
Oh, I thought I was going to.
No, the other way around. It's a lot.
Price is writing you.
It's a lot. No, it's the other way around. It's a lot. So he had 54 total yards in a game.
Before contact, I'm going to go say.
Yards after contact.
After contact, 52.
57, which means
57.
He had more yards after contact than total yards in the game. The man was set up to fail. I mean, he was getting obliterated behind the line of scrimmage pretty much every time he touched the ball. It's not a surprise he averaged 3.4 yards per carry. I mean, it sucks. Like, he was 5th in missed tackles forced, 4th in yards after contact per carry. Honestly, I think we're being a little too harsh on Brees Hall. Outside of the fumble, his game doesn't look as bad when you look at those numbers.
Other than that, Miss Lincoln, how was the play?
The fumble, I mean, the fumble's a problem, but he's had one fumble ever in his career before that, and I think it was in his debut. So it's just unfortunate. But the run blocking was really, really bad. I thought Tippmann had a really bad game. Tippmann was probably the worst run blocker that I noticed watching it back. AVT was bad too. I'm willing to give AVT a little bit of leeway. It is his first game coming back from a torn Achilles. That's tough. That's tough. That's really tough for an offensive lineman. He also has had less time to recover than like an Aaron Rodgers because his Achilles injury happened week 6, 7, whatever it was. So, I mean, it's a tight time frame for him. So I'm willing to give him some more time to hopefully get back up to speed. Unfortunately, you're just going to have to deal with that for the time that he is working his way back into a rhythm. But yeah, the run blocking was bad, and it's definitely a concern moving forward. I do think once they have a little bit more time to gel together, it shouldn't be as big of a problem. Obviously, they didn't play him all in the preseason, so you have 3 new starters on the offensive line. Tippmann and Elijah Vera-Tucker barely. I don't know if they even started the game next to each other last year. Maybe they started one. Yeah, I think they started one game when Tippmann was at guard and Vera-Tucker was at tackle. I'm pretty sure they started at least one game together. Obviously, both in different positions now. So it's going to take them a lot of time, or at least some time, to gel together. So I'll chalk it up to that, some of it. But I do want to see them be better against the Titans in week 2. Unfortunately, you're facing an interior that has Jeffrey Simmons. You have T'Vondre Sweat, who looked amazing in week 1. That's a really tough interior defense to face. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can bounce back. And we'll talk about that probably in a moment if you want to talk some Titans right now, Mike.
Let's talk right now. Let's talk some Titans. Obviously, the 2 main battles that I feel are going to be waged are going to be Titans receivers versus Jets cornerbacks, because the Titans spent a ton of money on receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, and those 2 interior tackles.
Hopkins playing with a torn MCL, by the way.
Yes, he is, and he only had 1 catch yesterday. But at the end of the day, though, this is going to be a Will Levis thing. I actually like Will Levis more than I thought I would. Like, I was not a huge fan as a prospect. I was a 2nd-round prospect. Huge arm, very daring, too, in a way that I hate all these quarterbacks now going 18 for 25 for 150 because of all these checkdowns. Like, and not in a dumb, like, chuck it deep kind of way, but, like, actually make the defense respect you. And Levis does sometimes. Like, that debut against the Falcons, he was diming them up. But you get a lot of the problems that you see with a lot of these, like, big, goofy white guy quarterbacks where the inaccuracy is not there. They're mobile, but not like they're in a weird mobility space where they're mobile enough to kind of get out of the pocket a little bit. So coaches plan for that, but they're not like running quarterbacks like a Jalen Hurts or a Lamar Jackson or a Jaden Daniels where you could like do designed runs for him. But the biggest thing with Levis is honestly the same problem that befalls Josh Allen sometimes when he plays the Jets. And he gets very antsy. And he wants to make a big throw sometimes, and that can lead to interceptions. And not just interceptions, but throws where you're like, oh, that was oof. It was like if you're watching the Broncos-Seahawks game because you don't value your time, Bo Nix had an interception where as soon as he threw the ball, Adam Archuleta went, oh, no, before the ball got picked. There's a couple of Levis throws where he'll do that. But if he gets cooking, I mean, he's got an arm, and he's got receivers too. So I know the Jets have hampered quarterbacks better than Will Levis, but also Jacoby Brissett dimed him up last year. So you got to prepare for what he can do if he's in a groove. And as we see, beat the Dolphins with Tua. When he's in a groove, he can make some throws.
Yeah, Levis was bad in week 1. He was real bad. That Titans-Bears game was so interesting. I'm glad the Jets weren't playing, so I got to watch a good amount of football on Sunday.
The Bears gave up 17 points, did not score any points on offense, and won.
Insane, dude. It was very much a tale of two sides of the ball for the Titans. The defense balled out. I thought their defense played excellent. The offense was really bad. And a lot of that was down to Will Levis. And I know, Tony Pollard had some good plays, and they were able to move the ball on the ground. Levis was really bad. He threw a couple of interceptions. He had the one pick six where, the famous photo now, like, oh no, great photo.
That was at the end of the game, I think.
Yeah, it was. Levis is going to make some mistakes. And there was a quote that I read you right before we started, and I should have just pulled this up before, but it's from Jermaine Johnson kind of talking about Will Levis, where he said something along the lines of, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but something along the lines of like, he's good. He's got a good arm, but we know when things are going wrong. Basically saying, like, if you pressure him, he can make some mistakes. And that is true. Maybe Jermaine Johnson shouldn't have said that after what the Jets just did in week one. Maybe just, I don't know, maybe not the time to say that, but it is true. Will Levis can make a lot of mistakes, as we saw in week one. And I think the Jets need to get pressure on him to win this game. This needs to be a bounce back game for the defensive line. They need to win the battle up front to have a chance. They need to be able to stop the run first and foremost. They need to have the ball, because that was honestly the biggest issue in week one is the Jets barely had the ball. If your opponent has the ball for 40% of the game, they're probably going to win. That probably means they're winning, and they're probably doing a good job. So the Jets need to find ways to stop the run on defense and establish a run game on offense. And if they could do that, they should be able to take care of a team that they are a lot better than on talent. Like on paper, they are a lot more talented than this Titans team. The bigger, I guess the biggest concern I have, we just touched on it a bit ago, is the running game, is the Jets running game, because Jeffrey Simmons is really good. T'Vondre Sweat is a very good young player. He had a great first game.
I'm like old school space eater, but with a little more quickness.
Yes, and then they also traded for Ernest Jones from the Rams, who's a solid player as well. The Titans, by the way, the Jets missed 18 tackles in week one. The Titans missed 5. A lot more disciplined defense, at least from what we saw in week one. So that's going to be something that the Jets need to manage. And
is Jamal Adams playing in this game? Because he's on the Titans now.
He was out in week one. That's a great question. I don't know if he's going to play in week two, but he was injured last week and he did not play. I don't know what the latest
on with the Titans.
He had no other choices, dude. Where's he going?
No, the Ravens worked him out. The Ravens were interested.
Did they actually offer a contract?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know, man.
Oh, you know what it was? Okay.
What?
The Titans DC, it was Denard Wilson, and he used to be.
Oh, Denard Wilson. I love Denard Wilson, man.
Yeah, he used to be a DB coach for. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, good for Denard Wilson. That's going to be Tony Odom is the next guy who's getting the next Jets defensive backs coach who's going to be a DC one day. Denard Wilson, man, I haven't thought about him in a while. He was with the Cowboys, right? After the Jets, I think.
No, he went to the Eagles.
The Eagles, that's what it was. He was in.
And then last year he was the Ravens defensive back coach, and then Titans. Right. So
good for him, man. But yeah, that'd be really fun if Adams plays. I didn't even think of that. I usually love looking at the Titans. Let's see who's on this Titans roster that's a former Jet. I always love doing that. Obviously, we got Jamal Adams, but he might not play. I don't know if there's anybody else here.
Not really.
Nick Folk. Nick Folk, everyone's favorite.
Nick Folk is still alive. What is he, 40? Nick Folk?
He is very old. Nick Folk is one of, I believe, 7, if you include Greg Zuerlein, current or former Jets kickers who are on NFL rosters, which means that I think it's like 23% of the NFL or 22% of the NFL has a former or current Jets kicker as their kicker. Pretty crazy.
Nick Folk is 40 now. Oh, my God.
He's old, man. And then I literally believe there's only one other player looking at even the practice squad who was ever a Jet, and that's Corey Levine. Do you remember Corey Levine, Mike? I bet you don't.
Why'd you ask me that question? You know I did.
Corey Levine was an offensive lineman who signed with the Jets and never played with them. He was with the Titans. They signed him. They cut him, and then he went back to the Titans, and he's on their practice squad. Fun fact.
What a journey.
Fun fact.
But you mentioned up front, too, but, I mean, let's flip it around. What a game Tony Pollard had in his debut with the Titans. And now I know Brian Callahan said that he wants a little more of an even split between Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, because they paid Tony Pollard a bunch of money and he's really good.
Pollard's fine. He's fine. They shouldn't have paid him that money. He's fine. He's a fine.
Pollard's good. 1,000 yards a couple times. He's good.
Dalvin Cook had 1,200 yards the year before he came to the Jets. He was not good that year.
Well, yeah, but Tony Pollard was good last year too, though.
Tony Pollard was fine last year. Maybe we have different opinions on Tony Pollard. I think he's a perfectly average running back who is fine in a rotation.
Well, I think the thing, though, too, is he's only really started the 1 year. So now he's really starting. And you know what? 82 yards and a touchdown against a good defense on the road.
No, he had a good week one. Absolutely had a good week one.
And you know what? Jordan Mason let the Jets up. They're not in a position to look past anybody.
No, definitely not.
So they don't stop Tony Pollard because that negates the Levis thing if he can just hand it off to Tony Pollard all the time. Now,
yes.
I am concerned, though, because I'd imagine – I know that – did they really travel Sauce a lot in the last game or not really?
Great question. I actually have not looked at that. I will get back to you in a second.
I was going to say, I'd imagine if they move him around a lot, imagine he'd go on Ridley more.
Yeah, I would imagine so as well. Sauce Gardner in week one, snaps by position. Yes. Actually, yes. He played 38 snaps at left corner and 16 at right corner. So he was moving around. That's more than he usually moves around. So they did actually move him around quite a bit.
And guess how many catches he allowed? Ugats.
He's now gone, I believe, 3 games, I believe, in a row without allowing a catch. He hasn't allowed more than 2 catches in a game in like 9 games. You know how absurd that is? That's patent. And I know. All right. And people were getting on his case after the games, like, yeah, he can't tackle. All right, you're right. Who gives a shit? Like, yes, I wish
Deion Sanders couldn't tackle.
Like this, what we're seeing is genuinely historical greatness. Like this is unreal.
It's honestly like, but see, the weird thing though is when there's a player like when Aaron Donald got to be that good, or like when J.J. Watt got to be that good, when Calvin Johnson got to be that good, everybody was in awe of it. And with Sauce, it's like it was a holding merchant. Wasn't he like the 3rd best corner in that stupid NFL players ranked the players show?
Yeah, and people call him the most overrated corner, most overrated player in the league. You know the last time he allowed more than 2 catches in a game, Mike? This is actually absurd. Like, this is ridiculous. Is week 5 of last year.
And he probably allowed like 3.
He allowed 3 catches for 19. 3 catches for 19 yards. He has not allowed more than 35 yards in a game since week 1 of last year. That's insane. Like that doesn't make sense.
That's Revis.
That does not make sense, man. How does he do that? And people still don't understand how good he is. Like, that's crazy.
I'm looking at the Titans too. If there was ever a bounce back game for this defensive line, man, you got to have it now. Because here's their left to right. Here's their offensive line. J.C. Latham. Mm-hmm. He did not look great, but I thought he was extremely overdrafted.
He's a rookie. He's going to have some growing pains.
Right. There, Jermaine Johnson. There's your bets. So, Peter Skoronski, converted tackle, who is okay, I think.
He's
probably
fine.
Not 11th overall pick, but he looks okay.
He struggled in week 1 a lot. He had 2 penalties at a 36 pass block grade.
But I mean, last year for a rookie, he was okay.
Yeah.
Lloyd Cushenberry.
That's
okay. Free agent guy.
Yeah.
Great name. Dylan Radens, who's not very good.
He's fine.
And Nicholas Petit-Frere, who's not very good.
It's a really young offensive line.
Cushenberry's the graybeard in that group.
The others are all within their first 3 years in the league, I think.
Radens is in his 4th, but yeah. So this should be I need a Will McDonald sack, I need a Jermaine Johnson sack, and I need a Quinnen Williams sack. Minimum, I need that. Because this offensive line is begging you to get after Will Levis. And you know what? If they leave him protected, go look at his splits when he's protected versus when he's not. You give him time, that he can throw up all 60 yards, Will Levis.
He's got an arm.
You mess him up, young guy, risk-taking, not particularly accurate. I mean, they thrive. That's what the Jets thrive against, this exact type of quarterback. And especially guys, like we mentioned, like the Allen struggles the last couple times and why Patrick Mahomes had, like, what do you have, 2 picks and almost 3 against the Jets?
Mm-hmm. Should have been 3.
Because they get antsy and they go, why can't I get any big plays against this suffocating defense? And that's why. Oh, here's a good stat from Brian.
Yeah.
Despite allowing 190 passing yards to second-year quarterback, Saleh's 2-7.
If he does that again, they're winning this game. Or Tony Pollard rushed for 150 yards. It's one of those 2 things.
Yeah, one of those 2 things. Yeah.
Yeah.
If they hold Tony Pollard under 80 yards, they win.
Yeah, probably.
I don't see Levis throwing for 300 yards against this defense.
I don't think if this secondary gets torched by Will Levis, maybe. I mean, look, we gas up Sauce Gardner every week. Eventually, he's going to have one bad game.
It's going to be a Stevie Johnson.
Right, it's going to happen. Maybe Calvin Ridley's a Steven Johnson. I don't think he's ever played Calvin Ridley that I can think of.
He has not. Although I do think Calvin Ridley might be the most overrated receiver in the league.
Yes. Well, Ridley is. This is a crazy statement. They're very different stylistically, but I think you know where I'm going with this. He's turbo Alan Lazard.
No, I don't know where you're going with this.
In that, like, big play merchants who drop a lot of passes way more than they should. Obviously, stylistically, they're very different. They're very different builds, and Ridley's a lot faster than Lazard. But that's where I was going with that. I don't know if that's a fair comparison. I understand what I was saying with that.
Well, I was just worried just because
he's better.
It seems like the receiver of note that's given him the most trouble has been Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
And Ridley kind of has a similar style of play. That's why I was worried about Ayuk, but he did pretty well on Ayuk. I know he dropped the touchdown, but that was Michael Carter on Ayuk on that play, not Sauce Gardner. All of this now, I'm saying all this to say I still think the Jets are going to win this game because we did not talk about that Titans secondary, and there's a reason for that. Now they have Algerius Sneed, so I don't know. He's good, but I don't know if they're going to do like a Charvarius Ward thing where they just don't throw at him the whole game. But you look at the rest of this defense. I mean, Amani Hooker, whatever.
I think he's pretty good. I think he's a little underrated, Amani.
He's okay. Quandre Diggs, I think, is on watch.
Yeah.
A little bit. Jamal Adams, I think, is washed, period, full stop.
Yes.
And Chidobe Awuzie, okay, whatever.
He's fine.
He honestly spent a lot of money on this secondary. It's certainly not anything super scary. This could be, although it's been over 1,000 days since Aaron Rodgers has thrown for 300 yards in a game, which is a true stat.
Mm-hmm.
I think this might be the game where he could break the schneid. That's just me.
You know who Chidobe Awuzie is at this stage? He is Morris Claiborne on the Jets. That's what he is. Former Cowboys.
He's not that bad.
Morris Claiborne was fine with the Jets. He was their number one corner, but de facto.
I think that's the problem.
That's my point. Is that I'm saying that Chidobe Awuzie. I mean, I guess he's not their number one corner because they have L'Jarius Sneed. I feel like their secondary has a lot of names. Like you'll see that secondary be like, oh, Chidobe Awuzie. Oh, he was all right with Dallas. L'Jarius Sneed. He was a top corner with Kansas City. Quandre Diggs. Oh my goodness. Roger McCreary was a second round pick.
Oh yeah, Roger McCreary. I forgot about him.
He's their nickel, I believe. Like they have a lot of names. But it's not like the totality of it is not as good as it actually is. And I think Sneed's a bit overrated. He had a really bad week one, it seems. Awuzie is fine.
Did he?
Yeah, apparently, according to the PFF.
Didn't they throw for like 90 yards?
He had a 38 PFF grade. 35 points.
Probably all tackling.
No, he allowed 3 catches on 5
targets.
Oh,
no, not that.
On 5 targets. I don't know, man. I didn't see the game. I don't know. But PFF.
I watched it back. I thought he was doing okay, but
Sauce Gardner, by the way, was targeted one singular time in week 1, and we know what it was. It was that slant to Ayuk that he just punched out
down.
It was the only time he was targeted.
And they didn't throw out. They said, "All right, that's out for the rest of the entire game."
Yep. Then they didn't even attempt it. And DJ Reed, by the way, DJ Reed got a little too much flack after that game. I thought he played pretty well. DJ Reed, what did he do in total? He allowed 2 catches for 29 yards. Can we relax? Can we ease off?
It was all Quincy got put in a blender.
Yeah, can we ease off DJ Reed? Like I saw Jets fans I feel like Jets fans, there's a segment of Jets fans who already want DJ Reed to be washed because they know the team's not going to re-sign him. And that's so dumb. Like
and also because just the way some people think, like, all right, Sauce is on this receiver, this guy's on that receiver. So if that receiver has a play, it must be DJ Reed's fault.
Right. Like I've seen so many Jets fans throughout the summer before the season even started being like, most overrated player, DJ Reed. He's going to have a terrible year. He's going to be bad. Because Jets fans they're hedging.
They know he's not coming back.
They know he's not coming back. So they're like, oh, he's a safe player to shit on. That's dumb. DJ Reed is still good. Like, no, he's not Sauce Gardner, but we're comparing him to the best player at his position in the entire world. DJ Reed is a very good cornerback. And until further notice, he's still very good.
All right, prediction time.
Yeah,
I have the Jets breaking the streak, and I have them winning this game. I'm going to say Jets 28, Titans 17.
Okay. I think
because I feel like Rodgers is going to have a couple big plays. Even with the Simmons and Hall tandem right there, I feel like there might just be one crazy Breece Hall run that makes up for a lot of the struggles there. And I do think there will be a commitment to like, look, we got to run the ball this week.
Yeah.
And then I think Rodgers by himself just having more time. I think he's going to be able to make some plays against the secondary that's below average. It could be really good, but I think today, September 11th, 2024, I think it's below average.
Yeah.
I think they're going to score some points. And again, honestly, as much as I like the guy, I think he could be good. I don't trust Will Levis yet. And I certainly don't trust him against a secondary of this caliber. Like, the reason, too, is because the Bears, I think, have a really good defense. Honestly, it's not too different from the Jets. Like, they have a couple defensive linemen that are really good. Quinn Williams, Montez Sweat. They got one really good linebacker, Tremaine Edmonds, Quincy Williams. Maybe the best two corners in the league, Jalen Johnson, Sauce Gardner. Like, I think that skill-wise, I don't think the Bears' defense is that far off. And I think he read a really bad game. So I don't think the Jets are going to be like a get-right game for him.
No, this is not a get-right defense. Despite what we saw in week 1, on paper, it should not be. Daniel Tannenbaum saying, talk about Williams, Gibson, Corley, and Conklin. Ruckert had no targets. Rewind the stream. We talked about it already.
We did. Yeah.
We did already talk about that. Sorry, I just wanted to respond to that. What do I do for my prediction? I will predict the Jets win. We were both right in week 1. We did predict the 49ers win, so we're both 1-0 on the season, unlike the Jets. Sorry, unnecessary shot. I'm going to say
my fantasy team. I got to get shout out Bears defense. You got me 26 points and a 24-point win.
I scored 170 in my fantasy league and lost, and I'm real pissed about that.
What kind of funky scoring system are you doing?
Super flex and then 2 flex.
Oh, I know a guy who's in a league that he calls the Chaos League, where missed kicks and extra points are like minus 300.
Oh my god!
So it's just like all about the kickers. It's called the Chaos League.
That is actually awesome.
Whoever Jake Moody would have like 1,000 points or something.
Right. Justin Tucker's trying to sell him right now because he's on watch, and I hate to say that, but I'll say what I want to happen and what I think will happen. I want a comfortable 2-score Jets victory. I don't think it's gonna be a blowout, but I think it'll be a comfortable 2-score Jets victory. Please, I'll say 24-13. I think the Jets defense gives up 3 scoring drives, but in typical Jets fashion, they only allow, they allow a couple field goals, maybe even like 24-16, which would be 1 score. But I think they'll, in typical Jets fashion, they will allow field goals. This defense, if you are playing fantasy football, by the way, start whatever kicker is playing the Jets defense. Because even if the Jets defense plays well, they're still going to allow field goals. This happens all the time. It's the bend but don't break Robert Saleh mantra. So I do think the Titans will get a few scoring drives in there, but you got to hope it'll be better than last week. I'll say 24-13. Jets get a few more scoring drives because they get more time of possession. Aaron Rodgers gets in a rhythm. Hopefully it's a bounce-back game for Breece Hall, and I think the run defense is better while still a little concerning. I think we'll still see some signs of concern, but maybe you'll have a Jermaine Johnson sack. Maybe you'll have a Will McDonald sack. We didn't really talk about the Titans pass rush much either, but that other than like the interior, their edge rushers do not scare me. Like Arden Key, Harold Landry's fine. He's all right.
He's just been hurt so much. He's just not going to be.
Arden Key is one of the Caleb Murphy. I barely know who these guys are. Like, who are these edge rushers?
Arden Key is starting in 2024.
They're at least according to our lads, their starting edge rushers are Harold Landry and Arden Key. That's crazy. Like that's and they'd be behind them. They have a 7th round pick, Jalen Harrell. I don't know who that is. Caleb Murphy.
I believe he went to Michigan. Jalen Harrell.
Oh, was he playing with Braden McGregor? Look at that.
Yes, he was. Okay.
It's not good.
252nd overall. Just made the team.
They did have 12 pressures in week 1.
Whoa, he played 30% of defensive snaps as basically Mr. Irrelevant. Not bad.
Yeah, they had 12 pressures in week 1. Arden Key played a lot. He did not have any pressures. Harold Landry had 3. Then T'Vondre Sweat. They have Sebastian Joseph Day, whatever, sure. But yeah, their edge rush does not scare me. So hopefully pass protection holds up again. Hopefully it's a bounce back game for the run blocking. I'm going to say 24-13.
As Brian says in chat, we're going to have a real bad time on the post game.
Yes.
If Will Levis, if Billy Jeans dices them up and they're 0-2, it is going to be hell to pay, man.
That will be. Hopefully that's not going to happen.
Because, the Jets always, they always pick us up.
Something unexpected is going to happen. It's the Jets. Something weird is going to happen. I don't know what it's going to be, but we'll find out, man. Maybe
Braylon Allen, 200 yards.
They still have Nick Westbrook-Akine, right? Maybe he goes for 3 touchdowns or something. I don't know. Something weird.
So thank you guys for joining us on the Jet Press podcast, where we started off 0-1, but hopefully things are looking a little better. We are going to be live after that Titans game, no matter what the result is. Please let it be a win because I don't want to talk about an 0-2 team with Aaron Rodgers. But you can find us on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Overcast. We are there, and we're on YouTube. So subscribe, like. That's how you support the show. And you can also now give super thanks on our live streams.
That's true.
If you want to go kick over a couple chunks of change, we would be eternally great. Any penny you give us is extremely appreciated. So thank you for that. And Justin, take us home.
Of course. And even just watching, commenting, all that stuff, much appreciated. It's just fun to be able to talk Jets. Like honestly, it's a privilege. Like legitimately, it is a privilege to just come on here and talk Jets.
It doesn't feel like it all the time, but
it's not. But it's cool that we get to do this and we get to talk with other Jets fans about this. Like I try not to take that for granted because it is really cool. But anyway, thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at by Mike Luciano. Follow me on Twitter at Justin T. Freed. Follow Jet Press at the Jet Press. Download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, like, hit that notification bell. You guys know what to do. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time and live immediately following every single Jets game. So we will be live this Sunday after the Titans game. Thank you all for listening to Jet Press Podcast. I've been Justin Freed. That's been Mike Luciano. We'll see you guys next time.
Hoping for 1-1, man. I don't think we're asking for too much. We're asking for 1-1.